I was coming in and wishing you a happy Labor Day. But I was really curious, how many of us remember why Labor Day started? So I know a lot of times we use Labor Day to mark the end of summer, so we're having a lot of beach days and barbecuing with our family. But that's not exactly what Labor Day was meant to be when it first originated in the 1800s. So Labor Day in the 1800s was started to really celebrate the workers that risked their jobs and even their lives to give us the labor standards that we have today. So I want to take a moment to really reflect back on that because that definitely resonates with me and how I run Song and Sugar Sweets. So back before we had labor standards, the 1800s, they could do really they could require anything of people. So people were working 12-hour shifts 7 days a week. We had 6-year-olds working in mines and working in factories. There were no safety standards. Buildings were highly flammable, made out of wood. Things were just going so terribly wrong. And so workers decided that they wanted a life of dignity, and they rose up to make sure that people were aware that they deserve more than what they were offering. And that's why we have the Labor Day we have today and the labor standards that we have today. And so I'm so grateful for the people, 100 years ago, 200 years ago that stood up and said, we deserve more. But I also want to be that person because we still have that happening today and that labor standards are not where they should be, especially in the agriculture industry. So today in 2020, we have farmers that are working for pennies an hour, picking crop 12-hour days. We have people we have the workers of farmers who are, working 12-hour days. And then the farmers are paid pennies for their crops, so they can't afford to pay their workers fairly. We have, unsafe safety standards for picking crops still. And also we still have child slavery in 2021, which to me is incredible that we still allow this to happen. So that's why I choose when I bake to bake with fair trade ingredients or ingredients that are fairly traded. And this just ensures that the companies that I'm supporting are not supporting those practices. So fair trade, what they do is they basically ensure that farmers have contracts, that they're not being pulled into a slave contract. The contracts are fair and legal, that they're making a fair wage, that they are not working for pennies an hour, but they are working for an actual livable wage. They're also making sure that the farmers producing the crops, they receive fair wages for their crop. So that way, even if the market tanks, that they're still given a living wage for their crop. They also work to make sure that farmers have access to land, credit, and training, which when you think about it, women produce 60 to 80% of the food that we eat. So they literally feed the world. And then women also have less access to land, credit, and training, making their job incredibly difficult. So that's why fair trade works for basically gender equality as well in those fair standards. Also stopping child slavery or making sure that children still have dignity if they have to work. So here in America, children still work. We have 16-year-olds working in fast food restaurants and with jobs to help their families. It's no different across the seas. We want to make sure that those children still have dignity and can still go to school and have shoes and all of those basic rights. And also safety standards, making sure that, farmers are providing their workers with safety training and, safety equipment so they can do their job safely. Lastly, fair trade is also working for sustainability, so making sure or ensuring that farmers are looking at sustainable practices when farming their crops. So using these sustainable practices, you might lose a little bit of yield in your crop. However, because you're given a fair wage for your crop, you might actually make more money in the long run. So making sure that we're not destroying the environment to make crops. So one example I always use because it's me and it's near and dear to my heart is the chocolate industry. So if you enjoy Hershey's chocolate or Reese's, you're unfortunately supporting child slavery because right now there are thousands of children kidnapped from their homes, promised fair wages and jobs, and shipped across the country to a different country and then working for pennies or literally nothing for several years. And so back in the early 2000s, bigger chocolate companies like Nestle and even Cargill, who's like world renowned for chocolate, they signed a pact and were like, we're not going to allow child slavery to exist in the chocolate industry. And they all agreed. And unfortunately, it's still happening today. You might have noticed maybe a couple months ago that Nestle was just in the news being sued by child slaves because they were child slaves. And unfortunately, the court sided with Nestle, saying they couldn't really do anything because it happened overseas and not on American soil, which is incredibly disappointing for me who wants everyone to live a life with dignity. So again, that's why I use fair trade, and that's why I'm going to encourage you guys this Labor Day to use fair trade also. So my challenge to you is go to your pantry or your fridge to look for an item that you could trade out for a fair trade item. So again, it could be chocolate, it could be tea or coffee, it could even be more conventional like bananas or avocados. You can also look for other standards that are eco-friendly like Rainforest Alliance and FSC. They do a lot of things that are maybe cotton, jewelry, wine and spirits, and paper products. So if you use a lot of printer paper, switching to a sustainable paper might be in your budget. That being said, I know that fair trade is more expensive than other products, and so it might not be in your budget to go fair trade this year, and that's totally okay. So my challenge for you then is maybe this Labor Day weekend or next Labor Day weekend, what can you do to support laborers? And I would suggest maybe not shopping on Labor Day weekend. So remember, Labor Day started as a celebration of laborers and celebrating them for the standards of labor that they worked hard to get for us. And now as things become more commercialized and just a little bit more greedy, we're now forcing those laborers to work in our grocery stores and our fast food restaurants and our shops while managers and people higher up get the day off and some of their families. So shop early so that way when it comes to Labor Day that you're not out there supporting those businesses, making their workers work and it's supposed to celebrate them. And then if we all start doing that, those companies will eventually shut down on Labor Day so that way the laborers can actually spend some time with their family. Again, I hope this is some food for thought. Again, not to make anyone feel guilty, but to push us all to be better, to make sure that everyone can live a life with dignity. And on that note, I will see you guys later.